Hand-to-mouth existence is what we were looking at, and in such a time that we started Humblebean, so it was a beautiful story of a confluence of so many people coming together to make something happen. That is when I realized that use the word we and not I. Because when your intentions are good and when you want to add value to something that you're really passionate about, I think the world conspires to make sure that it falls in one place, and that's what happened to us.
Hey guys, welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today the guest that we have on the show is Soomanna. He's the founder of Humblebean Coffee, which is a coffee solutions company that handles all aspects of the coffee from farm to cup. So today you are in coffee, but you actually started your career in the financial banking sector. And you spent about 14 years in that sector. So I'm curious to know, to start the interview, how did that experience of 14 years in the financial banking sector affect how you run Humblebean Coffee and how you sort of navigate the world of entrepreneurship?
One thing about banking is it's quite dynamic in nature. At the same time, very disciplined when it comes to timelines, when it comes to closures. So the hardcore discipline that got instilled in the banking days really helped us, get to wherever we are. Discipline and methodology, all of this led us, to bring that kind of rigor in what we do.
Sure. And then, so that was for 14 years of your career, and then. I guess I'm curious to know why you decided to leave the financial banking sector. Because you joined a startup after that, if I'm not wrong.
So what actually into the run-up of events to join a startup, there are a few things that actually happen in the banking industry. That is, I started as a feet-on-street sales guy, selling retail sales, accounts to people. So it is a very difficult, target-driven daily job. And what actually happened over a period of time, since I was a proficient sales guy, I had an opportunity to train a lot of sales professionals inside the bank. One thing led to another. So from sales training, I went to leadership training, and then behavioral training, and then organizational development. And then after that is the time that I realized there is something inside me to have built without a precedence, in the sense like to go in and define a curriculum, define a pedagogy, and then having to recruit so many number of people who could be potential future bankers. And that's when I realized that I'm not hardwired into the corporate world, and I have a lot of entrepreneurial streak inside me, and that curiosity led me to look out for an opportunity, and therefore the opportunity came my way where I was part of a startup in 2013.
So what was this startup that you ended up joining, and what were you doing there?
This startup was mainly concentrating on, it revolved around the life of an entrepreneur. What does an entrepreneur need? I mean, the skill sets, the tools that he requires, the marketing outreach that he requires. So everything that surrounds around an entrepreneur's life, that is what we wanted to build on a virtual as well as a non-virtual background. And somewhere in hindsight, I find that we were slightly ahead of times, and we probably wouldn't have been market ready. And hence a lot of time and money went into product development. And by the time when we went out to market, we had to dabble between having to choose to look at overheads and the leaking bucket of the company versus sales that was really not spanning out the way that we wanted.
And so it basically sounds like it fell apart, hey?
Yeah. So it kind of nosedived, and I was part of the nosedive. So because I went in when the damage was already done. So I was not part of the initial part of the team. So I had an opportunity to figure out two things. How can I make this better? And if I cannot make this better, then how can we wind things up? So eventually, that took about 2.5 years for us to, wind up the whole thing. It was an immense learning experience, having to see how the market responds, how vendors respond to you, how you can keep the morale of your team high, all of that. So it is a very good 2.5 years of learning for me.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been, there's probably points during that experience where you were wondering, why did I ever leave the financial sector, but at the same time, it seems like you sort of came out with these learnings and this newfound perspective that has probably benefited you in the long run, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that really worked on my behalf is I had my wife who was very supportive of me, and then we just had a second kid, and it was a very difficult time because 2.5 years I never got paid, and it was intermittent pay. And savings got all washed out. So it was one of the most difficult times that we faced, but also a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can say that I was in a nosedive, right? And we crashed. I mean, you did it gracefully, but it did crash, but you survived. What did you do after that sort of insane, difficult experience?
There were two choices ahead of me. One was to pick up a corporate job, which I obviously was very likely to get an amazing corporate job. It's because I have years of experience, and the startup only added value to what I did. And on the other side, there's one thing that was intriguing me is that I wanted to add value to the coffee side of the world because that is where I grew up. I raked coffees. I wanted to go back to my farmland and then see what we can do for the coffee industry per se.
So you grew up. When did coffee come in?
I'm a third generation coffee farmer. This was part and parcel of our life, and I always wanted to add value back into my farmland. And then I started writing down, what can we do with the farm, the coffee industry per se, and that is what led me to start Humblebean.
It sounds like you were in a pretty bad situation financially after this startup kind of nosedived. How were you able to then jump into entrepreneurship and start your own company in a situation where you're probably in even a little bit of debt?
So one of the thoughts that came to my mind was the book that I read a long time back, Think and Grow Rich. One thing that really caught my attention was if you don't burn the bridges, you'll never move forward, right? So we were sitting clearly with two choices of able to take those media job versus starting Humblebean. We had a discussion at home. So the reason for this to happen was my wife told me, what could go worse than what it is already right now? We have already seen the worst of times. So let's go ahead. Let's start something that you always believed. Let's go ahead with the journey. And then we kind of had sleepless nights. We're going to say no to this job. So how do we pick things forward from there, right? I went to my very close friend, and told him, see, I want to incorporate a company. I need a structure, right? You need to incorporate a company. He was my classmate. So he said, don't worry about it. We'll incorporate the company. You go ahead. You don't worry about the money. We'll see when we cross the bridge. And then another classmate of mine, I was narrating the story. Then he said, I have somebody very nice for you. She has left a very big advertising company. So she was a creative director of one of the leading brands in India. And she may help you put the brand. I said, I have no money to pay. She said, there's no harm. Why don't you meet up with her? So I met up with the lady, and then at the end of the conversation, she said, forget about the money. Really love your story. Go ahead and build it. And I was saying, I'm definitely going to pay this at some point of a time. Thank you so much for that, but I don't feel guilty. Let's start the work. So I went and approached some of the legal guys whom I knew in the past. They said, go ahead, build this. We will see when the time comes. I went to the management consulting guys who were building an investor deck that I know them pretty well. They said, go ahead and do that. So then I was narrating this experience to a close friend of mine, an investment banker from Dubai. And he said, I'm going to put the money, start a private limited company. We'll see, because the ideology is very nice and all of that. So we went ahead. We received the first round of angel investment from my friend, and the company began. Making inroads, branding came out. We were completely a private limited company, started our sales, started exporting coffee, and then one thing led to another. The most important part of this is that we were financially very, very behind, and hand-to-mouth existence is what we were looking at. And in such a time that we started Humblebean, so it was a beautiful story of a confluence of so many people coming together to make something happen. That is when I realized that use the word we and not I. Because when your intentions are good and when you want to add value to something that you're really passionate about, I think the world conspires to make sure that it falls in one place, and that's what happened to us. So this is one such example where we started with absolutely nothing and managed to come this far. So why Humblebean? I mean, what was so relevant in a time and space when coffee companies are on the rise? There are so many coffee companies existent in India right now. And what made us start? So as I told you that I come from the farming background, and one of the inspirations for us to start a coffee company was that there was a huge gap between the farm to cup, which meant that there were people, discerning customers at other end of the spectrum, willing to pay a huge price and look into all the aspects of drinking coffee and then pay for those experiences, while people remaining at the farm level never even realize where the coffees are appreciated, where they could be. All of that, right? So that kind of, I know this is a cliche because a lot of people are trying to figure out why the coffee industry has been there from the last 100 years. And this is a common topic where people are complaining about 30 to 40 cents for a farmer and $3 to $4 for a cup. So this conversation kept on going. Me coming from the farming background realized that 95% of the farmers in India are small and medium farmers, number one. By default, we grow coffee in one of the finest conditions, is because biodiversity that we have in India is second to none in the world. The flora, fauna, and hence the carbon footprint is very less in India. So we already have these positive aspects of where we sit, and these small and medium farmers cannot represent themselves. Why? That is because you have large buying houses sitting out of these places and taking the premiumness of the coffee by leveraging that with the roasters across internationally. So that means to say they had access to market, they had access to quality controls inside and all of that. So for the farmer, it was just redemption for his coffee, just reaching a point of view and then taking the money. So I thought, why not let the farmer understand that a little bit of tweak because by default he's growing good coffee. So can I do a little bit of tweaks and measures without having to spend more on the terms from post-production, because that is where the whole problem was. The post-production, storing, sorting, drying, all of that was not being paid attention to. So can we look at a consortium, can we educate the farming community and get them abreast to understand the different kinds of coffees that is being served across the world, how it has been appreciated, where the coffees have been appreciated. So we wanted to make sure that can we get small and medium farmers' coffees to be produced, can it be palatable? Can they make it to a cafe? Can they make it to a brewing, the different kinds of brewing methodologies that we use in the world. So if we are able to prove that small and medium farmers' coffees can come into the mainstay of premium drinking coffee, I think we have a say there.
So what were the first steps that you took towards building Humblebean Coffee? I mean, what was that leap of faith moment where you finally took the first step towards building it?
The need to bring in transparency was very important, so that the dependence is created back to the region or the estates specifically. So we were mulling over this idea as to how do we bring this into play. And one of the ideas that we stumbled upon is that can we identify all the nodal points? That will mean that we can identify the estate, we can identify where that coffee comes from, we can identify where it has been cured, where it goes and all of that. And hence, when we want to take traceability back, then you'll know a good coffee which is fared well somewhere else could fetch more money. So then we stumbled upon the idea of blockchain in the initial early stages, and we approached a company which integrated tokenization of their coffee. This is a company based out of Europe. The nodal points that we wanted to identify had a lot of process lacuna in the sense like there were a lot of process correction that had to happen at the place of produce, which could not be directly addressed on a platform like blockchain. So one thing led to another, and then we eventually came to know after about 6 months when we were almost embarking into the platform that they had built. But the platform was already something that they wanted us to onboard. It was not exclusively built for coffee per se. And we realized that this will not work. For us to bring in transparency or whatever, we need to address quality first. We need to understand how farming orientation can bring in that kind of a quality aspect into the whole value chain. So we completely disowned the whole blockchain part, and that almost, we were lost about 6 months in this whole, trying to figure out what we need to do next.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was one of the missteps that we have had. But now, in hindsight, if I look at was it a misstep? It's actually no. We have been able to progress quite a lot in terms of where are these value addition that can be done. For example, on the farm orientation part, we have listed about close to 50 farms who have the potential to grow premium to specialty. They are currently small and medium farmers. So we have already started work around the small and medium farms to educate them on drying methods and then so on and so forth. So we have, while we speak, that's already in play. Second aspect is where do we cure these coffees and in what quality standards do we need to cure this coffee. So we have identified certain curing houses which actually can do that. So we have shortlisted them. Then we realized that who are the discerning customers who are going to buy these coffees, right? So there were a lot of inquiries that we had. So we incubated a set of about 10 entrepreneurs who are in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and they have been marketing coffees under their own brand name. So we literally developed those entrepreneurs from the scratch. And we also realized that there is, in the hotel management colleges, there isn't a formal education with regards to coffee. Everybody had to go to Italy to get it done. So we went and approached the college and then said, why not we build a curriculum which will bring in expertise in coffee sciences, because it's a very exhaustive subject, and then why not we do that? Why go all the way to Italy? Then the college was very happy to say that. We were almost on the verge of signing up with a coffee company based out of Italy for formal education. We are more than glad to be doing that in India. I said, let's build a curriculum. And we signed an MOU with them, and this will take off anytime. So we will have formal education with regards to coffee that will come up anytime. The fourth aspect is the brew bar. We opened an exclusive manual brew bar in the heart of the city, where we have a control set of people who come in, because this is in a very high-end workspace. So obviously these discerning customers are well-traveled, they know coffees. So what we wanted to prove there is eliminate the espresso machines altogether and bring in brewing into the whole mainstay, which means to say the need to order for a cappuccino and lattes goes into the backstage, because once you start drinking cappuccinos and lattes, you will never explore the world of coffee, right? This brew bar is functional from the last 3 months. So small and medium farms coffees are being brewed in different brewing methodologies that is across the world, from a siphon to AeroPress to a Chemex to many other instruments that we have got. So a lot of customers come, they get educated, they also pick up equipments and then also have their personalized way of doing coffee at home. So we wanted to encourage personal home brewing, into everybody's lives. So this is the end of the spectrum. We started all the way from the farm education to all the way to leading to where we can control at the where people are literally drinking coffee, right? So this is all that is being functional as we speak.
Wow. So that's sort of the idea, right, of farm to cup. You've created a series of solutions over the course of the last 3-4 years, basically since 2016. And it's really impressive to see what you've been able to accomplish in such a short span of time, considering where you were in 2016 after this sort of startup nosedive that you experienced before Humblebean. My last question to you is, what does the path forward for Humblebean Coffee look like?
Humblebean, I see Humblebean establishing a lot of trading hubs, in some parts of the world, having a global presence. And what we want to be is an Indian global company having its presence in at least some of the European and Asian countries, emulating the model that we follow here. And we definitely want to have a global presence. So that is what we are working towards, and we are almost there. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we will have a global presence soon.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how things turn out for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So if you want to know more about Soomanna's journey, or you want to know more about Humblebean Coffee, I'll be leaving a couple of links down below. You can go check those out in the description of this video. And also, if you have any questions or comments about his journey or about the company's journey, it would be great if you could leave a comment down below. And also would love it if you could share this video with anybody that you think would be interested in it. Thanks for watching this episode, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
For sure, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I think, the journey has been incredible from financial sector until coffee, and everything in between. So,
thank you.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
There we go. It's a wrap up. The camera's survived.
7%.
Hey, there we go. 7% just there.